2 hours. Great turnout. Amazing people who came together there. Outside, as the day was just beginning to warm up. My shirt is only now drying from Cedar Park, though it was 4 hours ago. So many amazing people came together. And we talked about all the things that we are for, the things that we believe in. Things like making sure that those veterans who come back from bearing the battles of this country, who put their lives on the line for the United States of America, that we hold up our end of the bargain. We make sure they can get mental health care access, especially at a time that too many of them are taking their own lives. We make sure that they are focused on a career or their education or the ability to start a small business. I didn't know this until someone stood up at a town hall and told me right after World War II, those veterans who served in that era, the greatest generation, had a nearly 50% small business ownership rate. These were the entrepreneurs who literally built the economy of the late 40s and 50s and 60s, the prosperity and wealth that extended to so many. The rate of business ownership for those who served post 9/11 is 4%. Want to make sure that given their sacrifice, their service, their expertise, their commitment to this country, that they have every possible opportunity to succeed as well. We talked about public school education. My kids, Ulysses, is just starting his first year in 6th grade of middle school. His sister Molly, who's 10, her last year in elementary, and Henry, who's 7 years old, is in his first year at Mesita, the same public school that I went to when I was growing up in El Paso, Texas. Only he's now learning math and English, and he's learning math in Spanish. He's thinking, he's reading, he's writing, he's speaking in both languages in the largest binational community in the hemisphere, maybe in the world, where we've made a virtue of our location and of the fact that we are a people of two countries speaking two languages coming together in this one place. This is our 32nd day on the road straight. Some of that we've been able to drive with Amy, my wife, and with our kids. Some of it without her, but I always check in every single day and get an update on those kids, how they did in school. Ulysses, who's learning the alto saxophone, and this is his first week, and you can only imagine the noises coming out of that thing and what Amy is putting up with. Henry, who's playing soccer at Madeline Park every day after school, and Molly, who is signed up with a local wildlife animal rescue outfit in El Paso. And her first charge in this new volunteer position, which means when Molly at the age of 10 volunteers, it's Amy, whose age I will not tell you, but my wife who's volunteering as well, to drive Molly there to take care of a blind squirrel that someone picked up in East Texas as they were traveling west across our state. Who knows why they picked up that blind squirrel in the first place? Who knows why they decided to drop it off in El Paso, Texas, as they continued west to California. But it's now in El Paso, and these are the rules as far as it comes to a blind squirrel. You're not allowed to release that squirrel into the wild, I guess ethically, right? It's defenseless. You cannot do that in good conscience. You cannot give that squirrel to a family to have as a pet. The only alternative to euthanizing that squirrel is to ensure that it is kept alive for educational purposes, so that kids and adults, for that matter, in El Paso can learn a little bit about the wildlife of East Texas, I guess, in the westernmost county. And so Molly goes, with Amy's help, to take care of this blind squirrel a couple of days a week. When I talk to Molly on the phone, when I'm providing an update to Ulysses, who smart kid, asks me all these questions, when Henry wants to know whether or not we're winning. And I've stopped trying to explain to him how elections work in this country, that there's a primary, and that after you get through that, there's early voting on October 22nd, and after that, it's decided on the 6th of November. And so, Henry, we don't know if we're winning until that election day. Now I just tell him we're winning, because he just wants to make sure that he's got that under control. When I'm talking to him, I'm also reminded of why Amy and I made the decision to do this in the first place. The conversation that we had more than a year and a half ago, where we said, given what's going on in this country right now, given what's on the line, given the stakes that we face, 200 and at that point 41 years into this experiment, that we can freely choose our elected representatives, that we can freely decide the course that this country will take. We want to make sure that we do everything that we can within our power to do the absolute best for this country that we love so much. And also, we anticipate those questions that Ulysses and Molly and Henry are going to ask of us. When all of this was on the line, when all this was being decided, when we still had an opportunity to get it right, I want to know what you all did. I know that as a child, I would have probably been asking my dad, my mom, that same question. I know that they are going to ask us about walls 2,000 miles long from Brownsville, Texas to San Diego, California, which if they are built will cost us more than $30 billion, will require using eminent domain to take the land of our fellow Texans, to build that wall not on the international line, which is the middle of the Rio Grande River channel, but on farms, on ranches, on homesteads, on private property that we'll have to take from people at a time that we have the lowest northbound apprehensions on the U.S.-Mexico border since 1971, the year before I was born. And increasingly those that we are apprehending are not trying to evade detection. They're turning themselves in. They're kids, literally kids like Ulysses' age, who've traveled on their own or with other kids almost 2,000 miles from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, which happen to be the deadliest countries in the Americas today, some days the deadliest on the planet. If those kids are lucky, they're here with their moms, they're here with their dads, and unfortunately for them, unprecedented and really for the first time in this country's history, those kids, those parents trying to seek asylum at record low levels of northbound apprehensions are being separated, are being detained. Their parents are being prosecuted like common criminals, sent back to the very countries they fled from in the first place. Those children detained first in cages, then maybe in foster homes or in tent shelters like the one outside of El Paso, Texas, where I'm from, in Tornillo, in the Chihuahuan desert, where if it is hot here, it is brutally hot there. And those kids and those parents who've been deported back to those countries do not know when or even if they're going to be able to see one another again. And that's happening in this country. My kids are going to want to know, where were we when this was going on? They want to know, where were we when the president was proposing to ban Muslims, all people of one religion, from the shores of a country that is comprised of people from the planet over, or describing the press, which I was always taught to believe is the best defense against tyranny, as the enemy of the people. The FBI as an arm of one political party as it pursues the truth and gets closer to the facts as far as they go, as high up as they reach. There is going to be an accounting for what we do or for what we fail to do at this moment. But as someone in Hamilton County just asked me to do, she said, Beto, when you go to Comanche, talk about what you believe in. Because she reminded me that we are doing this not against something, not against someone, not against another political party. In fact, if you are a Republican, I want you to know you're in the right place. If you're a Democrat, you're in the right place. Independents, welcome here. Non-voters, because you gave up on voting because you thought it did not make a difference. Folks who have not made up their mind about this next election, I'm glad that you're here at this deeply divided, highly polarized moment in our history. This is a time for Texas to take the lead in coming together around the big things that we believe in. I believe that every child should be able to get a world-class public school education because we've gotten behind those public school teachers, paid them a living wage, allowed them to teach to the child and not to a high-stakes standardized test. When they retire from that career of public service, I believe that they should be able to receive a cost of living adjustment in their retirement. There has not been one paid to a retired teacher in Texas since the year 2005. And what that means, that as the cost and mortgage goes up every single year, real income for those retired teachers declines. And to add insult to injury, last year in the state of Texas, retired teachers' healthcare costs doubled. putting them in the god-awful position of deciding whether they're going to buy medications that will improve their lives or keep them alive, or keep that roof over their head, or food on the table. George Washington said something to the effect 240 plus years ago that our ability to attract the best and the brightest into careers of public and national service is dependent upon how they see those who preceded them in those same positions being treated by this country. Those young men and young women who are thinking about careers in the classroom right now, upon which the future of this community, of this state, and this country depends, are watching to see how we treat those teachers who are in the classrooms right now, those teachers who retired from the classrooms years ago. We've got to make sure that we send the right signal to them, that we welcome them in to these careers, that we let them know that they're going to be able to make a living, one with dignity, and one where they can focus on that child, unlock their lifelong love of learning the way it was unlocked for me at that same public school that my kids are going to right now. That same public school teacher who helped me read and understand the Odyssey, to the point that Amy and I named our firstborn Ulysses because we didn't have the guts to name him Odysseus. Book changed my life, opened up new ways of seeing the world and myself, and the stories, timeless, thousands of years old, literally, about homecoming and reunion and battle and friendship and loss. Odysseus and his men literally going to hell and coming back from that. Seeing this dog that's kept itself alive every year of his absence as he's fighting that war in Troy, and the moment that he comes home, Argos sees him, recognizes him, and then drops dead. These really profound moments. At El Paso High, last time I checked, they're not reading the Odyssey anymore. They're reading the abridged version of the Odyssey. They've had to set aside so many days for standardized test prep that kids are not reading the full text. It's like we've got our priorities upside down. Those high stakes, high pressure tests, they're great for the corporations that market them and sell them and make profits from them, but they're not good for our teachers. They're not good for those kids. Being able to work a job that provides function in our lives. In other words, but for us, that job would not happen. That organization would not thrive. Life would not be as good for those here in Comanche or in Texas or in this country. That provides dignity, meaning you earn a living wage. You do not have to take on a second or a third job. You have the opportunity to read to your kids before they go to bed, to be there for them when they need you, to be able to go out and buy groceries, which too many of our fellow Texans literally do not have the time to do right now. I believe that everyone should have the education, the training, the skills, because we make higher education, whether that's a junior college, an associate's degree, the training, the skills, the apprenticeship, the certification available to our fellow Texans. Yes, it's some additional public cost, but because it is to the public benefit. I believe that we could go from being the last state in the country in terms of healthcare, access to a doctor or medication that keeps us alive, where the number one provider of mental health care services today is the county jail system in the state of Texas today, to the point that people routinely throughout the 254 counties of Texas get arrested on purpose. That's schizophrenia. That bipolar disorder from which they suffer and is untreated right now produces suffering so profound. And imagine how you would feel to bring yourself to do this, that they get arrested on purpose. And not only is it bad for them, because while we may be able to mitigate those symptoms and alleviate temporarily that suffering, inside, behind bars, they're not outside raising their families, going to school, earning that paycheck, paying taxes, writing amazing songs, blowing our minds with the art that they produce that betters our quality of life. That quality of life, that potential, that opportunity is literally locked up at the cost of $400 a night. Every single night that we keep somebody locked up for mental health care services. Not only is universal, guaranteed, high quality health care for every child, for every woman, for every man, the right thing to do morally and ethically. But It's the most fiscally responsible and sane thing that I can think of. I'd much rather pay $14.50 a day, which is the cost for outpatient mental health care treatment services for somebody who needs it. I'd much rather be prepared to pay for the insulin for that diabetic who would otherwise die. Like the 29-year-old man that I met in Laredo, Texas, who told me, I've never had health care, I've seen a doctor once, and he told me that this untreated diabetes and the glaucoma that I now have, before I'm 40 years old, I will be in the grave. What we know is that as he gets closer to his premature death, his suffering will become great enough that he too will take himself in, not to the jail, but to the emergency room, where the outcomes will not be as great, but the cost will be exponentially higher. He will not be prepared to pay it, but you will, in higher premiums, in higher taxes to the county hospital district or to the commissioner's court. We can either decide that we're going to pay for it up front at the fraction of the cost, or we're going to pay for it down the road at many multiples greater. And we're going to lose the potential of everything that that person would otherwise do. So I believe in everyone's ability to live to their full potential because they are well enough to do that, because we've helped this country lead the conversation on universal health care. I believe that in a country where more than 70,000 of our fellow Americans died last year from drug overdoses, in some cases veterans who were prescribed opioids by the VA, and the VA central headquarters, in a way that only the VA in Washington, D.C. could do, decided they were going to tackle this opioid crisis by cutting off the prescriptions of so many of those veterans. Veterans who were then forced, and they told me at town hall meetings like these, to buy their drugs off the street, to purchase heroin because it's the only thing that makes them whole or at least temporarily better. I want to make sure that we treat drug addiction and this crisis that we have in this country not as a criminal justice issue. I don't want to add any more to the largest prison population on the face of the planet that's here in what is purported to be the world's greatest democracy, a prison population that is disproportionately African American and Hispanic American. Though 1/3 are there for the use of illegal drugs, and though all races and ethnicities use illegal drugs at the same rate, disproportionately, it'll be some people instead of others who are doing that time. Disproportionately, it'll be some rather than others who, when they get out, have to check a box on an employment form to say that they've been convicted, making it that much harder for them to get a job, will be unable to qualify for student loans to better themselves so that they can do better for all of us, for their family, for their community, for their country. I would love for Texas, in a state where it is still illegal to use marijuana, and not just for those who want to get high recreationally, but for those who might be suffering from fibromyalgia, from glaucoma, for those veterans who came back from battle with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that doctor at the VA says, I would love to be able to prescribe medicinal cannabis, but I can't. I'm an outlaw here in Texas if I do, so I'm going to continue to prescribe these opioids. And I know there's a chance that this veteran will become addicted and die from it. I would love for Texas, I believe we can lead the way on true criminal justice reform. We can end a war on drugs that has become a war on people, on some people over others, that has cost us to spend trillions of dollars and has achieved absolutely none of its intended results. I know it's not politically convenient or easy to talk about this right now, but we can continue to do the same thing, the same way, and expect a different result. But no lesser light than Albert Einstein defined that as insanity, where we can decide that we are going to change course and make sure that we are there for everyone, providing the health care, the treatment, the public health education, so that we help people turn their lives around, get back on their feet, and be as productive as possible. I know that we can lead on that as well. And this, the defining immigrant state, the defining immigrant experience, this state home to nearly 200,000 dreamers, who though they were born somewhere else, were brought here at a tender age, probably do not know that country which they were born in anymore, do not speak its language, are as fully American as anyone else in any way that matters, are serving tonight in Afghanistan and in Iraq and in Syria, are teaching in our public schools. More than 20,000 dreamers teach in school against some mighty long odds right now, knowing not when They may be sent back to a country that they do not know, whose language they do not speak, and where if they are successful against those long odds, they'll be successful for that place, not this one, this home that they love, this place that they fought for, this place that they are serving right now. As the most diverse state in the United States of America, I think the onus is on us to lead the national conversation on immigration, to bring Democrats and Republicans and independents together to make sure that we make the most out of everyone who is here, that those dreamers are freed not just from the fear of deportation, but they are made U.S. citizens so that they can serve to their full capacity. That we ensure that those who are doing some of the toughest jobs in our communities, not too far from here in Texas terms, going to that cotton gin in Roscoe, 24 jobs in that gin. Not a single one of them worked by somebody born in Roscoe, or born in Sweetwater, or born in Abilene, or born in Comanche. All 24 really tough, very essential jobs to the West Texas economy and the epicenter of the largest cotton patch on the face of the planet, worked by people who in some cases travel thousands of miles to come here for the privilege of doing it. What if those same people could come out of the shadows, could get right with the law, could contribute back far more than they will ever take, and by their very presence, make us a more successful, a stronger, and a more secure country? Take it from the guy who lives in El Paso, Texas, a city of immigrants. A quarter of those who I represent in the United States Congress were born somewhere else, chose us, came here, yes, to do better for their kids, for themselves, but also to give far more back to this country than they will ever draw down. That is why El Paso is one of, if not the safest cities in the United States of America. That is an example by which we can lead for this country. We can be proud of, not defensive of. We can treat people with respect and dignity instead of trying to wall them off or militarize our borders. We can be confident, we can be strong, we can be bold, we can be big-hearted, and that is more than a match for the meanness and the hatred, the smallness and the paranoia that dominates so much of the national conversation at this moment. I believe enough the people of Texas. We can do this. We will do this. And we're going to do it together. The last thing that I'll tell you is the way in which we have chosen to run this campaign. Going to each one of the 254 counties of Texas, never asking at the front door your party affiliation, or who it is that you love, or who it is that you pray to, or whether you pray at all, how many generations you've been here, or whether you just got here yesterday. All we care about is the fact that you're here right now, that we are in this together, and we want to do big, ambitious, aspirational work for this country. Those of you who made phone calls on our behalf, who've knocked on doors, who sent an email unprompted to your friends, to your family members, to your colleagues, to tell them about the election of this lifetime. Whatever you are doing is working, so please keep it up. 2 days ago, a new poll was released in this race, and it shows that with 2 months to go, less than 2 months to go, before the first vote is cast in early voting on October 22nd, we are a total of 1 point behind the sitting U.S. Senate. You have brought us this place, and you've done it without a single dime from a single political action committee or corporation or special interest, and it's not put us at a disadvantage. The junior senator who does take PAC money, who just announced the formation of his own super PAC, has allies in Washington, D.C., one of whom just announced a 7-figure buy. So at least $1 million will be purchased on TV by folks from outside of Texas to try to determine the outcome of this election, and by extension, the future and the fortune and the fate of this country. To that, which raised more than $4 million in just the last 3 months. Without a single PAC, without a single special interest, with an average contribution of $33, 215,714 unique contributions made in 1 3-month period. To his $4.4 million, we together raised $10.4 million. And we did it the right way, a way that represents people, not PAC, people, not corporations, people, not special interests. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for helping this country to get its democracy back, to keep the focus on people every single time. And thank you for putting us in a position to celebrate an historic victory for Texas, this country, this generation, and every generation that follows on the 6th of November. So honored to be able to do this with you. Grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, Comanche.